Hello everybody, thanks for joining me. My name is David and this is my channel. Today's video, moving from individual consciousness into unity consciousness. This is the journey. We came from unity consciousness into this world, into this body, and inherited an idea of individual consciousness, everything separate, having its own source, so to speak. And now we need to move back into who we are, into that unity, into that cosmic consciousness that we all belong to, that one mind of God that we are. How do we do that? Well, that's what this video is going to talk about. So the first thing I would say is you cannot take a large body of water and cut it up. You see, as soon as you try to cut it up, it just molds it back into itself. And I've talked about this before. If you could put the glasses on right now, you would see that everything is indeed one. It's so one that it's all moving and flowing together perfectly. And somehow it's connected to your vibration. Now, I've learned if you could let go of the shell of the body for a second and just feel your vibration. And what is vibration? Vibration is how you feel. It's how you feel. Do you feel good? Then your vibration is flowing. And what is it flowing with? Well, it's flowing with your source. It's flowing with that mind of God that we all belong to. The wholeness of all of, and I'm going to use a word here from the Course in Miracles, the sonship. Now, the sonship represents all of us in our entirety, the totality of all of us. Now, the ego doesn't like the word totality. Its whole prospect is to cut everything in half, or rather into many, many pieces, so that way they do not look like they belong together. And then it gives everything different meanings. And that's mostly what we're doing unconscious. If you're walking around unconsciously, you're giving everything a different meaning and thereby making it seem like it's not connected. It's very, very different from itself. But in reality, the Holy Spirit, the whole Spirit, you see, shows and helps us understand that it is indeed connected. It is one. So even though it seems to be in pieces, if you put them back together, they would create one idea, one wholeness. And that's the idea of holiness from the Bible. So important to understand the true interpretation of holy, which means whole, which means sonship, which means the kingdom, as Jesus talked about. So how do we move from individual into the beginning of unity consciousness? Well, understanding this vibration. If I look at my vibration and I say, okay, how much of the sonship am I allowing in? How much of, Abraham Hicks would just call it your inner being, but she speaks in terms of we, consciousness. So there's many. And how much of the sonship and how much of the mind of God am I allowing in is going to be determined based on how my vibration feels. Does that make sense? If it's really low, then I'm seeing everything very, very, very separate. And as I'm seeing everything separate, I'm not allowing the wholeness of all that I am to flow through my vibration and into this world. Our goal was simply to be a conduit, to bring the wholeness of all that we are into this particular experience, not just little pieces. And what happened is we started taking all the things that were anchoring into the world because it's coming through us. There's nothing out there coming back to us from a separate source. It's coming through us. We started taking what was coming through us and separating it. That's why we talk about the veil. It has little holes, and as it comes out of us, it separates. And as it separates, it seems like many, 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 many different sources. And then when it reflects back to us, it reflects back to us in many, many different ways. Does that make sense? It's coming out in many ways and it's coming back in many ways. What goes out must come back. That's how we extend the sonship. The goal is, how do we get the sonship to come through us in the form of one so we can extend the whole sonship out into our experience and then receive it back instead of splitting it into many, many, many pieces. So the ego consciousness, that individual consciousness, that's what it does. It splits it into many, many, many pieces as it goes out, not as it comes back. And then as it comes back, it feels different than us. It feels different than itself. They feel different than themselves. And therefore, we create the illusion of many, 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 many different sources instead of one. Does that make sense? So I've learned if I am a vibration and everything is me, then as I look at one thing, my vibration can switch, and it determines now, as I look at this, it determines how much I'm allowing of the whole sonship. And then I look over here, this determines how much I allow of the whole sonship. And look over here, and this determines how much I allow of my whole sonship. Can you see how the world is kind of separate, so to speak? This is all that matters. How my vibration is receiving the sonship, receiving the Holy Spirit, is going to determine what I see in every single thing. I am the source, and that's where we get the idea I am. That's the beginning of unity consciousness. I am. That means that I am, we are. That means I cannot see in anything other than I see in myself. That means that what I'm looking at must reflect back how much of the sonship I am receiving in that particular moment. It has no meaning of itself. Just like if you take a bunch of water, you take food dye and you pull red water, that's a high vibration. It goes into the water, it makes the whole water red. If you're happy and you're receiving the sonship and you walk out into the world and you can hold that vibration, the whole world will shift to match that happiness, and you will only receive and attract happy things back. Make sense? There's the red dye. So every time our vibration shifts, we are shifting everything, every single thing we see. And the illusion is that's not true. And the ego says, no, Dave, that's not true. The one is all and the all is one. No. See, reinterpreting that law to feel like everything's separate outside of us and we have to change ourselves according to the outside world. Can you see how it shifted? So now we become an effect, our vibration becomes an effect of what's coming in. If your vibration is, and you're changing your vibration on a regular basis based on your life, well, where is it coming out from? Because it must be giving first. Do you see? Now, the more you look deeper, you'll see that what's coming out is coming from that ego consciousness, that individual consciousness based on belief structures that we've inherited mostly, right? Social conditioning that we started believing for our own. And then making a world that literally doesn't exist. As Yeshua says, it's an illusion. Separation is not true. So you look close enough and you say, the ego is the one giving my life, and I'm the one who's trying to receive it or not receive it. Does that make sense? So the ego, you're serving it, and we're out here defending it as it comes in. That's backwards, isn't it? That's why if you notice when we say, well, I want to do this, who are you talking to? I want to. Who? Why not just do it? I don't want that, and I'm not sure about that. Who are you talking to? See, we're kind of talking to that ego master. That's what is sending things out into our life and giving meaning to our world from an unconscious place. And the more you recognize, that's the idea of the mind activity, just keeping it going. Why is it still going? It's going because it's trying to separate everything. That's what mind activity does. It separates it. And it creates a belief structure that's reinforcing itself over and over and over again. Notice that mind's just continuously seeing separation and different meanings in everything. And it's always going. And the more we catch onto it, the more it goes out and comes back, goes out and comes back. So when you're walking around the world and things feel like they're pushing against you, you have to stop and say, my ego is doing this. In other words, that part of me is giving in the form of separation, and now I'm receiving it back. That doesn't feel good. Like Yeshua would say, you're never upset for the reason you think in the Course of Miracles. He says this, ever. Why? Because what we're doing is trying to blame the pieces. But in the reality, in the truth, we're the one giving them all meaning. Nothing comes back other than what you give it. It has no meaning of itself. And that we have to take by faith in order to move into the idea of unity consciousness. Nothing has any meaning of itself. So as it comes back, you stop and say, well, I'm upset with that person. As soon as you say, I'm upset with you, you say, I am upset with I. So now one of these ideas that I give is, if If I say you need to do this differently, I'm actually saying I need to do this differently. Do you see? And the more we do that, Yeshua would say, what you're going to say to this person, would you say it to yourself? That's the beginning of unity consciousness, is kind of recognizing that truth. Everything is a reflection of you because you gave it the meaning for itself, and now it's coming back to you. Every time you say you would say I, you would say me, you would say we. You see, there is no you and me separate. If I look at that picture back there, I say we, right? What do I see of myself? Or what do I see of my source? You see everything as the Holy Spirit. See everything as a part of God or the wholeness of God. And then we start understanding that even the part has to reflect the whole. That's the way it works. The one is all, the all is one. So every part you see is indeed reflecting back to you the whole of who you are. If it comes back in a way where it feels like it's missing something, then that means it went out from an ego perspective and now it's coming back to show you it's missing. But what is it missing? It's missing your wholeness, not its wholeness. Do you see? We should be able to look at somebody and see the wholeness of who they are, regardless of what they are currently being. And if we can't see the wholeness of them, then we cannot see the wholeness of ourselves. Does this make sense? This is what causes negative emotion. This is what causes confliction and resistance in our vibration, which of course contracts our vibration and then disallows the sonship even more from coming in, and then makes it seem more and more and more separate. So the ultimate goal of this journey is to raise the vibration and allow the sonship to flow through in order to anchor it into the world in a whole way in order to receive it back. Does that make sense? Trying to make this as simple as possible, right? Unity consciousness is an interesting thing. I've been turning it on for quite some time, and I'm certainly not 100% there yet. I move back and forth just like all of us. But this is the clarity that I have received so far. When I look out in the world, I see myself. When I talk to my clients, I see myself. When I speak to them, I speak to them as I would speak to myself. If I see something missing in them, I'm very careful to say, this is the laws and this is the truth of who we are. What would you like to do? Because as you say, what would you like to do? Then you're saying it to yourself. That feels much better than, well, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing that. You see, you're just talking to yourself. You're just talking to yourself. And the more you recognize that reflection, the more you recognize it from that perspective, the more you will stop giving from the ego consciousness, from that individual meaning in order to receive that. You see, you'll catch it more and more and more from the other side. And that's usually how it works. And then Bashar would say, regardless of what comes in, because the journey really is about what's coming in. It's hard to control what goes out. We have such an unconscious belief system running. Everybody agree? It's hard to control everything that goes out, even though I do walk around giving things meaning on purpose, and I love appreciation, and I recommend getting a habit of that as much as possible to control the giving. But there's a receiving part, and that receiving part, which comes back to us, if you just find something positive in it, or you allow it, see, you create a one. That's what we talked about in the last video. It's not about looking out in the world and finding differences. Anytime, take this. This is so important. Yeshua says this in Course in Miracles. If you see differences, you'll see conflict. Period. There cannot be a difference between two people, two things, and not have conflict. And then now the sonship is in conflict with itself, or rather you are disallowing it and causing conflict within your own energy. So the trick is to see oneness, wholeness in everything. This is why Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. See God, love your God as you love yourself. You see, raise your frequency to that of the one. Let go of differences. Recognize everything's just a mirror because it has to be one. If I don't like you, I don't like me. It's still one. It could be reinterpreted to feel like they're different, but in reality, they're not. Recognize that what you see in others, you have to see in yourself. And if you see something in others you really don't like, let it go. Move on. What's next? As things come in, find something positive in it. Love and appreciate regardless. In the Way of Mastery, Yeshua says that you can get to a unity consciousness so much that you can be talking to somebody and recognize cancer forming inside. He talked about in their colon. And he said, as you're talking, you could be sending love to their cancer, beaming love to them. Now, why love? Do you see, in that, if you look at that idea, then as you're looking at someone that reminds you of cancer, remind you of something you hate, remind you of something that you don't like, send them love, not hate. And then it will come back to you. We have to learn to reflect who we are to everybody in order to bring them back from their sleep, to bring them back into love and wholeness without pushing against them, without hating them, without trying to change them, just holding that light for them so that way when they are ready, they can join if they choose. Does that make sense? Take that with you. It's a lot of information. Sit with it. Find out what's speaking to you. And of course, as always, it is up to you what you receive. My love to all of you. Keep the comments coming. Thank you so much for everything. Hit the like button if it speaks to you. Continue to subscribe. And as always, my unconditional love and appreciation.